I don't know if a lot of people realize this, but court is bullshit. Perhaps you've heard that before. Maybe you do realize it. And I know a lot of people will say, oh, you shouldn't curse within the first whatever number of seconds on YouTube because that's going to affect your algorithm. YouTube is bullshit too. Sorry to the people who that offends, but you know, words have meaning, and bullshit is a good word. It's a bad word actually, but you know what I mean. It's an effective word. Everybody knows what I'm talking about when I say that, but for a long, long time, I remember I was listening to Field McConnell, and he would say, oh, the courts are rigged. And I mean, you can agree with that. I agree with that, but it doesn't explain it. It's not that helpful. I've said many times, it's like going to the doctor and he says, you're sick, and leaves the room. It doesn't help you. We want to diagnose this and maybe cure it. We've got to know a lot about it. So what do I mean about the courts? People saw I had Elon Musk in the thumbnail. There was a ruling today, and to be clear, I'm not defending Elon Musk. I got a lot of issues with Elon Musk. Let me start here. So there was a ruling today in the Northern District of California, in this case of Elon Musk versus OpenAI, and they determined that the case was not brought timely. The statute of limitations had run. It had expired. By the way, I'm back on the High Line. A lot of people have asked for more walking around videos, and I do want to do that. I've just been busy. I've been quite busy actually with a lot of stuff, some of which I'm going to talk about today. But there have been some changes on the High Line. I don't know what this is really, Buddha or something. Here. This is Tuan Andrew Nguyen, the light that shines through the universe. It's a sandstone and stainless steel and brass statue. Fifth High Line Plinth Commission is this. So I don't know. They got rid of that giant pigeon. How do people like this? There's no face on this Buddha. I'm sure that means something. People can maybe pause the frame and read this if you're interested. I'm not going to get into it all right now because I want to talk about court. So the thing is, I'm not going to offer my opinion on this ruling in the Northern District of California about the statute of limitations or any of the stuff in that Elon Musk versus OpenAI. I do have some opinions about it. I find it hard to imagine that Elon Musk didn't understand that the entire nonprofit structure of Y Combinator and, you know, the initial findings that Charles and I got to just from looking at that, the whole thing looks screwy. And it sort of reeks of Elon Musk trying to do something in court after it worked out in a way that he wasn't happy with. But I don't want to talk about that. The specific aspect of this that I want to discuss, and it's important for people to keep in mind that I am not an attorney. Nothing I'm saying is legal advice. I'm not qualified to give legal advice. You might find my opinions are wrong. You're free to look at this same fact pattern and come to your own opinions. I'm just saying the ruling today that it was untimely, I find strange because I've now for the past 10 years been forced to participate in a litany of legal actions in a lot of different courts around the country. District court, state court, New York, Virginia, Pennsylvania, where else? Florida, Washington, D.C., Indiana, so many. I'm forgetting, Michigan. So, I mean, I've got a good sampling. I mean, many people would even say I've got more experience in court than certainly many lawyers. Oh, yeah, they got rid of the foot. Did we see? They haven't replaced the disgusting foot. By the way, if you enjoy the show, please become a sponsor on crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com or subscribestar.com or patreon.com. crowdsource the truth. Definitely need your support and sponsorship to continue. That end of the High Line, unfortunately, is closed. I like to walk around there by the helicopter landing area, but you can't get there right now. So no replacement for the disgusting foot right now. We still have that weird cartoon character guy over there. But back to this Elon Musk versus OpenAI case. So they found it was untimely. The thing that I found so strange about it is, why did they go through, they had a trial with witnesses and all these big fancy rich guys coming in to give testimony, and I'm sure there was depositions and all this, and you're tying up the court for days, lawyer bills and everything. Why didn't they just in the pleading stage, the documents being filed, why didn't the judge say, hey, or why didn't any of the it must have been raised. I didn't even read the case, but if this is the decision that they came to, it had to have been raised by the defense that it was untimely. I don't understand why. In my cases, it always seems like the judges are shutting things down before there's ever an opportunity for anything to go to trial. If it's beyond the statute of limitations, I don't understand how we got this far. Maybe lawyers can answer and tell me, but that's not really my primary beef with the court system today. It's another case that has to do with Elon Musk, and that is Jason Goodman versus the City of New York. People might recall that in November of 2022, I went to Twitter, at the time trusting Elon Musk, that he was a man of his word. Perhaps that was naive of me. But I went there to tell him about how the FBI had illicitly taken control, allegedly, of Twitter, according to the information that I had seen, and was violating everybody's Fourth Amendment rights, everybody's First Amendment rights, weaponizing it and kicking people off. Interesting also that today, the Department of Justice announced a settlement agreement with Donald Trump on a civil case that he had brought against the IRS, where, instead of getting sued for $10 billion, they've set up this kind of restitution fund to pay out people who have been victims of, it said specifically, weaponization and lawfare. It's pretty amazing, actually. It's significant, I think. Again, I'm not a lawyer, so it's hard for me to evaluate this stuff, but, a lot of the cases that I've been in, they're getting shut down because judges tell me that what I'm saying isn't plausible. And these are theories, according to them, with no evidentiary basis, etc., conclusory statements based on speculation. But now we have a document from the Department of Justice. I believe that is the type of thing that a judge and a court have to do what's called taking judicial notice of. I didn't come up with this theory. The Department of Justice published it. So does it remain implausible that this type of weaponization is going on, that the FBI, they've admitted now separately in, I spoke about this, I believe, Berenson versus Biden, and that later became Berenson versus Trump, where they admitted that the FBI and the government at large was influencing social media. I've known that. I think a lot of people who watch Crowdsource the Truth have known that for a long time. But, judges and lots of people felt like that was unfounded speculation. Again, it now is something that needs to be taken judicial notice of because it's been adjudicated, as they say. It's been decided. So that's interesting, but I've been a little bit quieter lately than normal, in part because I've been quite busy up to a lot of things. One of those things was last Tuesday, my case, Goodman versus the City of New York, was granted oral arguments in the Second Circuit Appellate Court. Look at that. That's where they did that whole Hunter Biden laptop exercise. Aspen Ideas Festival. Anyway, had oral arguments in the Second Circuit. Seemed like a big deal to me. I don't know how often, maybe people watching will have some insight. I don't know how often an appeal in the Second Circuit is actually granted oral arguments when you ask for them. Definitely not always. It's taking forever to build these stairs. Look at this. I feel like China could build that in a day. Here, this has been going on for months, even though it's written in Chinese. I guess that's to let people know not to go there. We got some more art here on the High Line. New circus art. Archetype 1, Seduction. Bronze, paint, and concrete. That's seduction. It looks more like a circus act. And then we have a waiter over here. Not that crowded on the High Line today. What's the waiter doing? Servility. That makes sense. I don't know, is the circus intended to seduce you? And then here we have boxing. Resilience. All right. Interesting. Anyway, so we had these oral arguments in the Second Circuit, and basically what happened in that case is the magistrate judge in the district court, so district court, that's federal, Southern District of New York over here. Second Circuit is the appellate thing for the, federal court in New York. The Second Circuit covers New York. So the district court magistrate basically determined that my complaint alleged that the cops had retaliated against me for my journalism, and concluded that, that was speculative and conclusory, and therefore dismissed the complaint. So then I appealed, and I said, the court misconstrued my complaint, because what I was saying is, yeah, it was a First Amendment complaint, but in addition to freedom of speech and freedom of the press, the First Amendment also is supposed to guarantee you the right to redress grievances with the government, including with the police, and filing a police report. And that I was saying that when I was denied that right to file the police report by the police, that was the core of my complaint, and that I should be granted the appeal, and that the case should go back to the district court along with an order that I be allowed to amend the complaint for clarity and carry on with the case. So that's what we were there having oral arguments about, and I thought it was pretty promising that the circuit court granted me these oral arguments, give me a chance to go in there and explain myself. It was an interesting experience, I had chalked it up in my mind to, even if it's not found in my favor, that it's at least the experience is worthwhile, and it's, better than any other appeal I've had where they've just said, this is idiotic, get out of here, essentially. And so I went in there. This was just last Tuesday. This was quite quick, because today the decision came down from the appellate court, and they affirmed the district court, meaning they agreed with the district court. They found no error in any of the findings of the district court, which that was extremely disappointing, because I was pretty sure, when the oral arguments happened, one of the judges in the 3-judge panel asked the attorney for the city, this art thing is for rent. Last time I was by here, that was in business, no longer the case. One of the judges, the lead judge on the panel there, said to the attorney for the city, setting aside the First Amendment, is there any other rule or law that guarantees somebody this right to file a police report? As a matter of fact, I have an audio recording of the oral arguments. I'm gonna put that out right after this for sponsors, people on crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com or on subscribestar.com or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, or if you subscribe to me on X at JG_CSTT and hit the subscribe button, you'll be able to listen to the oral arguments. Tell me what you think. But this judge asked the lawyer for the city, is there any other rule of law that gives somebody a right to make a police report? And she said, I don't know. Which, seemed to me like not so favorable for their argument. But I went back home after that and I looked it up, and sure enough, there is rules and case law precedent in the Second Circuit where you do have the right to make a police report. The caveat there is that the police don't have an obligation to follow up on the report. You don't have a right to a police investigation. Look, the New York Burger Company is out of business. Not so good for Zoran Mamdani as far as reviving the economy of the city. I guess if you were the owner of a struggling restaurant being faced with increased taxes, decreasing wages, fewer people going to restaurants, maybe you chose to close it. They want to spend a lot of money, defending this case where I got choked. But the point is, I found out that under Rule 28J of the Federal Rules of Appellate Procedure, as far as I can tell, you're allowed to enter a letter after this type of oral arguments hearing if pertinent information, pertaining to what was going on in the hearing, is applicable to the case. So I did that, and I said, here's the case law findings, the what's the word I'm looking for? The precedents, that say that yes, you're guaranteed the right to have a police report, but the police don't have to do anything about it. Put that in there. And also said, hey, by the way, look at this finding in Berenson versus Trump now, where they said there was coordination between the government and social media and weaponization, etc. This all seems, relevant to my complaint, seeking to amend the complaint and all that sort of stuff. But today they decided, no, F you, Jason, get out of here. You lose. We agree with the district court. So this is why I'm saying court is bullshit. Because they can basically, in my experience, which is now becoming, I don't know about extensive, but certainly more than nothing, they basically can arrive at whatever they want and then go through the fact pattern and cherry pick whatever details support their conclusion. Now, I'm sure people are going to have a lot of advice that I can seek en banc review and all kinds of things. This is a pretty bad development for me. I was somewhat confident that they would find in my favor, and it's very disheartening. I think that anybody who thinks you're going to just go into court and get some kind of fair shake doesn't have a lot of experience in court. I see all these people saying oh, I can't wait for discovery and this and that. I don't think those people have spent much time in court. Getting into court, it's prickly business. Doesn't go so well. And by the way, I'm going against the city, I'm going against the cops, I'm alleging that the FBI is involved. There's good reason to believe, a lot of those people have some influence over the courts or are supported by the courts, in some way that might make it impossible for me to win at this. So it was a very disappointing outcome earlier today. And I mean, of course, people have heard me say many, many times that George and his brother have just been on me for nearly 10 years. I really hope that people will consider that. I mean, it just defies all logic that these two losers would have nothing better to do with their time for 10 years. You know, even if you believe that they just don't like me, they don't like my commentary, what I say, you're telling me in 10 years these guys don't have something better to do? Oh yeah, this is the other thing. So George's brother served me at the hearing. This was ridiculous. So I'm sitting there waiting for the oral arguments to begin, and this dude dressed in camo, who was like my height or shorter, served me with the process of George's brother's latest frivolous lawsuit in a jurisdiction where I don't live, where I don't have any significant ties, and where this action did not even substantially occur. So I mean, it's purely frivolous litigation, but he served me there. And you know, again, it's one thing to be all up on X making crappy posts and, you know, starting free anonymous accounts to put memes or insults or false defamatory insulting statements. That's pretty low friction. You know, we're talking about now, really think about this for a second, following the docket carefully. I almost missed it that there was going to be oral arguments. For whatever reason, they have not been emailing me. Normally, Second Circuit sends an email when something gets posted to the docket, but I almost missed it. Checked the docket. You can see when I confirmed that I was going there, it was pretty late after it was issued. So this guy is checking the docket, hiring process servers to go there. That's not free, you know, and 10 years. I've said it many times. I imagine you could, you know, destroy somebody's business, steal their job, do all kinds of terrible things. They might get over it in 10 years. Not George's brother. He's an obsessed maniac. Some people think he's mentally ill. That could be true. I'm not qualified to make that judgment. It's my opinion that he is. But you know, mental illness is a complicated thing. He's obviously highly functional, you know, able to formulate these legal, you know, theories and claims that get put into court. But it's interesting to see what the court allows to survive, what the court shuts down, how this Elon Musk case went as far as it did, how my cases, no matter how strong the facts are, no matter how strong the evidence is, or the legal theory, or the case law precedent, they just don't seem to want to find in my favor. It's really interesting. Look, we've got a play of Dog Day Afternoon. That's a good movie where Al Pacino tries to rob a bank. And I think Fredo is the other guy, right? Robbing the bank. Did people see Dog Day Afternoon? Yeah, so I mean, you know, that's basically it. Pretty rough deal there in court as far as the Second Circuit appellate, you know, oral arguments. I thought I did pretty well. I raised a point that the court was interested in, and then they went and, you know, upon due consideration, they still don't care. They still affirmed the lower court. So again, I just wanted to go over this for everybody because, like I said, when I used to listen to Field McConnell and he would say, the courts are rigged, it doesn't really tell you anything, you know. I want to understand how it's rigged specifically, what the problem is, really get to know the details of the issue. That dude's smoking some weed over there, smiling about it. But, you know, I don't know that I can single-handedly resolve this problem, but if anything that I'm finding out from this decade-long odyssey in court is helpful, in informing people, beyond just saying, the courts are rigged. Maybe this is not all for naught. I would encourage people, if you do like these types of videos, to become a sponsor. Like I said, I'll play the oral arguments hearing. People will be able to hear that on crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com or on subscribestar.com or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. I'd like to be able to have some kind of format where people could ask questions and stuff. It's not really easily done right now. The comments on all those platforms are spread out over all kinds of, 3 different platforms or whatever it is. It's annoying. Hopefully that can be unified at some time. I don't know exactly how that would happen, but I'm not completely out of remedies as far as this appeal is concerned, but this was definitely a step in the wrong direction as far as the outcome I wanted. Definitely not good for me. Some people would even say that some of the litigants, the defendants, are intelligence community adjacent. Again, you might look at the facts and evidence and come to a different conclusion than that. I think that's the case. And if that is the case, can there ever be a fair outcome in court? I don't know. It definitely seems rigged. But anyway, thanks for watching, everybody.